Are we live? 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 Sorry, I was a bit late there. I was just looking at postcards. I've been to Hangleton today in Hove, and I went to St Helens Church, and I was just looking at postcards for pictures of Hangleton, and there's a couple on there showing Hangleton Church with all this ivy all over it. I was thoroughly absorbed because Hangleton now is covered in 1960s houses, bungalows, and all this kind of stuff. When our friend Arthur Cook took the whole Cook, I think. Arthur Stanley Cook went there 100 years ago. It was deserted downland, and there was just the Benfield Farm. There was the church, and then Hangleton Place, now Hangleton Manor. And it's fascinating to walk over that area, as I did this morning in the heat that we had. And all I could think of is that stuff that we spoke about 2 lives ago, that Morton, H.V. Morton, had said about how the downland had been encroached. So it was just heartbreaking. But it's a very nice area. I mean, they've kept it very well. It's not slummy at all. But it was all downland. It's all built on. Breaks my heart, really. It just really does break my heart. I get a bit emotional about that. Anyway, hello. Welcome to the Bald Explorer Live. We're reading H.V. Morton's I Saw Two Englands. Hello to everybody there. Let's just see who's turned up. Sorry, because I was a bit absorbed on my research. Linda Kane's asking in the parcel. Yes, I sent you an email, actually. I had posted both. And the parcel was to Croatia was £8.55, I think it was, something like that. So that was a pleasant surprise. There was no special thing. £8.55 and I think £1.50 to America. So that was good. Mark Donny McLeod, nice to see you there. Ed Loud and Ben Reed, good afternoon. Missed the half yesterday as I had a Zoom meeting at work. Oh dear. Can't have that. These bloody meetings for work. We don't want any of that nonsense. Hello to Judith. Hello. Good to see you. Turbo Stream. Had my first Zoom meeting. It's funny. Up until 8 weeks ago, is it? I'd never heard of Zoom. I'd never heard of it. Wilbury Castle Railway. Hello, Fred. Mike Stevens, hello. Now they're digging up the streets of Worthing to lay down 5G. This is the official 5G mime. Jack Carline, hello to you, Jack Carline. Nice to see you there. We're reading H.M. Morton's. This is my reading in the afternoon, in case you thought it was something else. So we will crack on. We'll try to crack on a bit more seriously than we did last time. I've got a glass of water because it's very hot at the moment. So, just trying to remember where the hell we ended up. Oh yeah, we ended up with this woman who took him around somewhere or other in Alfriston. Oh yes, here we go. So we'll pick it up and we'll Oh yeah, Turbo Stream says my only prior experience with Zoom is an H2N recorder. Yeah, exactly. I've got one of those as well. Jeff Kellison says your post offer is better than mine. A small parcel going to the UK is easily over $200. Blimey, that's just too much. That's too much. This was the hoodie, and it cost £8. I was working yesterday, made bread and buns. Fruity buns. Oh, I must make some fruity buns. Some lovely tea cakes as well. Right, here we go. I walked up the hill into Lewes, a town that has always been the pride of Sussex, though newcomers like Brighton, with its population of 147,000. I wonder what the population of Brighton is now. anyway, the population 147, have established themselves in the neighbourhood. Lewes, with its 10,000 inhabitants, remains the capital and the sentimental heart of the county. The older I grow, the more I appreciate towns like Lewes. There is nothing meticulous about them. They have roots as well as branches. They have weathered storms and dangers in the past, and they survive to prove to us that while life is often dangerous, it need not necessarily end fatally. I'm just going to get myself a bit closer to the microphone so that I can boom at you. There is both courage and experience in the stones of Lewes, and among the qualities of such towns is detachment, not from life, but from hasty judgments, a quality which gained perhaps in the process of watching so many generations go past, so many brides riding in their happiness, so many babies lifted to the windows, so many old men going for the last time to church. And through it all runs a connecting link of local spirit, the feeling that sheep tracks, which became lanes and then grew into roads, still carry men to the old town on the hill, men who are not unlike their fathers or their grandfathers. As long as you can meet someone called Verrill, Richard Verrill actually was, he's a Sussex. I think Verrill is a good old Sussex name. Vidler in the streets of Lewes, there is nothing much wrong with the town. I walked, as everyone does, to the ruins of the old flint castle, which stands on top of the hill. It's not an interesting castle to look at. Oh, it's charming, that is. But the view from its tower is magnificent. You can see the low country all around, and below the red tiled houses cluster almost in terraces, lying in a bowl whose rim is the smooth green contour of the downs. The Sussex Archaeological Society, which is one of the best organisations of its kind in England, has preserved in a house below the castle, and also in the castle itself, that queer assortment of articles which tells how many extraordinary things have happened in the long life of our country. I looked at a Roman altar, which some remote inhabitant of Britain had erected to Constantine the Great. It was discovered in a garden in West Worthing. In West Worthing, blimey. There is a Spanish gun found in New Haven Harbour, also a cannonball made possibly for the ships of Francis Drake, a Roman paving tile, village stocks, and a trolley used on bonfire night to draw tar barrels through the streets of Lewes. In the gardens of the castle are long, old-fashioned guns forged in Sussex, and round the wall, or rather let into it, are some of the original railings from St. Paul's Churchyard, which were removed from London in 1874 during street widening. These railings were made of good old Sussex charcoal iron in the reign of Queen Anne. They were taken when they were taken down from the churchyard. Some of them crossed the Atlantic and can be seen today in Hyde Park at Toronto. The story is that they were shipped in a vessel that sank but were recovered by divers. Later in the morning, I was lamenting the complete disappearance of the Sussex iron industry to a friendly and knowledgeable stranger in the White Hart. "Oh no, oh dear no," he said in a West Country accent that I've added to, which he didn't actually have. "We have the last iron works here in Lewes. You turn down the left by the lights and go straight down until you come to the Phoenix Works. If you're interested, they'll be only too glad to show the place to you." I took his advice and found a modern, prosperous-looking works humming with activity. They were making lampposts, iron manhole gratings, and a casting for linotype machines. It was good to see Sussex men still working iron as their fathers did long ago. The horses that charged to death at Brannockburn were shod with Sussex iron, and the first cannon forged in England was made at Buxted in Sussex. I didn't know that. How about that? Why did the iron trade leave Sussex? I asked. It was the first industry to go north and west to the coalfields, I was told in this fake South accent. Sussex iron... Thank you. Sussex iron... Hello, I lost my space. Hang on, I'll just get my space back. Thanks. Can I have my space back, please? Thank you. Can I have my ball back, please, too? Where the hell was I now? I've lost it yet again. Sussex iron used to be smelted with wood and charcoal. As you know, Sussex was a thickly wooded county in the old times, but the ironworks ate up all the forests. Not only did wood become scarce, but laws were made to prevent the deforestation. Is this him talking or is this me? No, it's still him talking. Deforestation. And in Elizabeth's reign, new forges and furnaces were prohibited. There's a word, it's difficult to say in a West Country accent. Prohibited by an Act of Parliament. It's difficult to imagine what Sussex must have looked like in those days. The iron stone was mined here. It was then crushed and smelted at the foundry and fined at the forge. Whole districts were cleared of the trees to feed the furnaces. Thousands of miners, hammer men, foundry men, charcoal burners, forge hands and smiths were at work until about 300 years ago. But the trees couldn't keep pace with the furnaces, see? Then the people began to grow wood for the furnaces. Even that didn't help. And gradually the Sussex wood-fired industry died away, and the coal-fired industry of Wales, the Midlands and the North took its place. As we were walking around the yard, we encountered a pile of pig iron. One thing good old Sussex has given us to the world is the term pig iron, said my guide. Have you ever wondered why a bar of iron should be called a pig? Well, here's the reason. In the old days, the metal, after having been heated for a fortnight, was allowed to run out of the furnace upon channels which had been made to receive it. There was one main channel and a lot of smaller ones leading from it. The resemblance to a sow and her piglets was pretty obvious to anyone brought up in the country, so the word pig for iron, for a bar of iron, has passed into the English language, but I don't think you'd find many people who could tell you the origin of it. Upstairs over the modern works is perhaps the best collection in the world of Sussex iron. Cannon, firebacks, wrought iron, pots, and even tombstones. It's obvious that most of the genuine antique Sussex firebacks, which are now sold at great prices by antique dealers, must be fakes. Nothing could be easier than to take a casting from these old specimens. Although the iron industry has left Sussex, the art of the smith lingers in the county. We can look upon the Sussex blacksmiths, who still make beautiful wrought iron gates, as the last vestige of a great medieval industry. I wonder if they do that. One other thing interested me in Lewis. This is known as the Anne of Cleves house, whose picturesque appearance is marred by a shop sign that invades its ancient roofline with the words, "Stop here, finest fish and chips, frying nightly." It actually says, "finest fish frying nightly." I added the chips because I couldn't help myself. Anne of Cleves, the fourth wife of Henry VIII, whom he did so rudely describe as the Flanders mare, was the only one of his 6 wives who retired safely with a pension of £3,000 a year and the official title of sister. Living in placid retirement, Anne not only outlived Henry by 10 years, but had satisfaction of watching him blunder twice again into matrimony. Her solid figure and placid, homely face were observed at the coronation of Bloody Mary, as she rode in a coach with Princess Elizabeth. Indeed, Anne of Cleves seems to have been one of history's few perfect stepmothers. Both Mary and Elizabeth were devoted to her, and she to them. What talks they must have had about "your poor dear father." I was not much interested in the house itself, except insofar as it helped to pay this admirable woman a part of her alimony, which is no proof that she lived there. There are a number of similar houses in Sussex linked vaguely with her name, and when caretakers cannot prove that she inhabited them, people go away thinking association is pure invention. But they probably were part of an Anne's rent roll, the price she gladly accepted in exchange for Henry's dangerous affection. So what he's saying is she didn't actually live there. So I didn't know that. I thought she lived there. Let's have a look. Good afternoon, Forest of Dean. Who is reading this, Richard or Mark Selwood? Says Andrew Norris. Mark Selwood would be. It's beautiful, isn't it, Richard? It's beautiful. I'm not much interested in the house itself because it's gunpowder, Richard. Gunpowder. It's Mousel. I was not much interested in the house itself, except it helped pay Mousel, not Mousehole, Richard. Yeah, maybe. Andrew Norris, just so you know, I have posted your thing to both you and your good lady. It is in the hands of the post office now, with Andrew Norris plastered all over it. So there may well be a man in Croatia with a bell in one hand and a tricorn hat on his head going, "Oh yay, hear thee, the Andrew Norris hoodie hast arrived," or some such thing. Ed Loud says, hello Ed, he says, I noticed that some homes of Edith Nesbit seem to follow me. How many homes did she bleed in have? Elizabeth Nesbit. What was she? Didn't she write the Wombles? Am I thinking of the right one? Or did she write the Railway Children? One of them. Oh, good man. Looking forward to receiving it. Yeah, there we go. I know I did. I just did standard letter thing, so I didn't have to sign for it, so they can probably just chuck it into the ocean, I suppose, if they wish. If they don't like the look of it or they're worried about it. But it should get to you, I don't know how long it takes. Let me know when you've got it. Sorry, just picking at my eye. There's a lot of pug in it. It is a little late in the day to sing praises of the Sussex Downs. They are among the most written of and walked over portions of England. And it is right that they should be so, because they are superb. Their attraction is twofold. Their curved contours are as restful as a day in bed, and the sudden way they loom straight out of the agricultural country is one of the most dramatic geological invasions which give our English landscape its character. It is almost as though the Downs are the mighty outline of some prehistoric monster whose bones lie below in the white chalk, a body clothed with soft tuft, powerful even in death. I have felt, and no doubt you have, the eerie character of the Downs. I came upon a reference to them the other day as the jolliest hills in England. To me, they're not jolly hills. They are rather sinister, melancholy hills, as I think anyone will agree who has stood on Sisbury Ring at twilight during the lachrymose summer. Remorse. Here's a word for someone to look up for me. LACHRYMOSE. Lachrymose summer. That'll be interesting. Somebody will probably get that. While it's true that their shape is restful to the eye, their bare expanses are haunted by dark, far-off things, even in Sussex, within hail of Eastbourne and Brighton. I seem to see the shadow of Stonehenge across the grass. I think he's been on drugs, this bloke. Most of England has been tramped upon by history until the footprints of Briton, Roman, Dane, Saxon and Englishman form an almost indistinguishable mosaic. But the chalk downs are almost as smooth as Crusoe's strand, marked by only one startling footprint, the bare mark of Neolithic man. I think it means to cause coughing, says Ben Reeve. Really? Gosh. She's buried in a church. Who's buried in a church? Oh, 5 children, and it was the railway children. That's Mike Batt for the Wombles. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Mike Batt for the Wombles. I thought the Wombles was written by a woman, because I saw a thing about the Wombles on YouTube, and there was consternation because they were making the Wombles black in the new series because they weren't diverse enough. And as the presenter who presented this YouTube channel said, but they're Wombles. They're not white. They're not black. They're not humans. They're Wombles. So when you remake the Wombles, you don't have to... I thought Mike Batt was involved in the television part of it. Maybe I'm wrong. And they had some bloke who said, oh, my mother who created the Wombles didn't think that at all. But hey, what do I know? Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Perks. Mike Batt wrote the music. Oh, right. He wrote the music. Yeah, there we go. That's what I thought. I didn't think he... Mike Batt, who wrote the music only, not the story. It was Elizabeth... Oh, yeah, that's right. Elizabeth Beresford. There you go. That's correct. You're absolutely right. Elizabeth Beresford. Because they had the grandson on there saying, you know, he was saying they're not any colour. But, of course, there's an Indian train now in Thomas the Tank Engine. Oh, yes, ethnically diverse. Where's the trouble with the BBC now? Of course, you can't have anything traditional and anything. Even they're teaching children, I understand, that, you know, characters... Shakespeare can be black now. He can be a black person. And you know, you can call me a racist if you wish, call me whatever you like. But I don't think Shakespeare was a black person. So why give that false impression? It's just because our history is full of white people. We can't help that. I mean, that's just the way it is. It just drives me mad. Oh, sorry, my eye is so puggy. So they're just trying to rewrite history. Well, thank God the kids are not at school at the moment. That's all I can say, because they're just having this very bad bias on teaching them stuff. Let's not get into a rant. Right, so anyway. Most of England is tramped on airs. Read all that, blah, blah, blah. He's buried there for 4,000 years. Who's buried there? Oh, it's sometimes you find in the chalk the flint arrowheads which he made, this is Neolithic man, or his polished stone axes, and in several places in Sussex are tunnels in the chalk, the flint mines, where he dug his way with a pick made of red deer's antler, and on the roof of the tunnels you will see to this day the smoke of the lamps he burned 4,000 years ago. And it's all very well saying that you can see it to this day, but we can't go down there and see them. They've filled them all in. The downs are haunted by the ghosts of hairy men, men grasping stone axes, men driving their little sheep before them over the sweet chalkland, peering now and then towards the black forest of the now peaceful Weald, as into some jungle of the Amazon. It's easy to forget such thoughts when larks are singing and the downs lie warm in the sunlight, but when the shadows fall or the thin rain blots out the distant maps of fields, leaving you alone with the grass and the wind, a little shaggy Piltdown man seems to be trotting at your side. This is interesting. I've read a number of books about Sussex and they all quote Piltdown man. And of course, we all know that was a hoax, an absolute hoax. There was no such thing as Piltdown Man, but they speak with such authority. And the sad part of them speaking with such authority is that it makes you question how much else they've spoken with authority that may actually not be true. Actually, Othello was a Moorish prince, so not entirely black. Marked on him, show. I can't see it. Just says show hide. That's all I get. Show hide. I don't know what it means. People did that before. Transgender rights are one thing, but distorting history and truth is totally different. Absolutely. This message is held for review. I don't know what message that is. So that's it. I like this place because we can remember England of long past, says Boyer Kaisha. Yes, absolutely. Lies and damn lies and the BBC, says Michael Angel. Absolutely. David Copperfield in the latest film was played by Dev Patel, whoever that is. Strange choice, even though he's a great actor. Actually, you forgot his race as the film progressed, which was very good. Yes, I you know, these, I'm sure all, you know, any actor, it doesn't really matter. The colour isn't really mattering to the acting, is it? And of course, David Copperfield is a fictional character in a Dickens novel. So in one way, I suppose you can get away with it because just as people do Shakespeare plays in different time zones, you get away with it. So there isn't all of that. But I think what is going on is, and of course you're giving roles to people, you know, minorities who might not have enough roles to do. And I understand all of that. But when it comes to actually implying, albeit subtly, as I have seen reports on, that we were diverse as races, more diverse, or as diverse as London is now in the past, that's worrying. It's worrying that is being implied, even if the actor is brilliant and you forget about the role because we're in the modern era. Because I think it's teaching the next generation, they're making assumptions from what they see. Even if they know it's drama, they're just making assumptions in their mind that is a fair representation of a Dickensian story, which it wouldn't be. Julia says, sorry, I was distracted by the baby. You don't usually see those held for review things, as I deal with them before you get to them. Oh, right. Oh, okay, so that's all right. I had never seen one before. Jim Mugford says, I enjoy the reading as I make bread. Big projects in the works. Also, as a tech gearhead, I also enjoy the video programs you make of the gear that you use. Oh, cool. Thank you very much. Mike Stevens says, you're right about the Moorish prince. I always thought he lived on the moors in the north of England as a small child. Yeah, well, why not? I suppose it depends of the character. If the character's race was described in the original work, well, of course, if it's described in the original work, then it makes sense. If it was non-scripted, then it matters not. If it was written, then it should not be... Hang on a minute. If it was left non-scripted, then it matters not. If it was written, then it should not be changed. Yes, I don't know. I don't know that I agree with you there, Ed, because... You've got to, you know, if you take a snapshot of the world and go back in time, if you had a camera and actually could see when you go back in time, sorry to be holding my head in a grotesque fashion, you know, but if it's drama, then you can, obviously if it's drama and it's not real, do what you like. Got no problem. You can have them all, you know, little green men from Mars for all I care. It doesn't make much difference. But it's when it's factual and it's a factual thing. But it is just this, I don't know, I just think there's this bias to try and make things less white. Let's just put the cards on the table. And that's like, but it's just like going to somewhere else and just changing another. If you went to Mars and there was a place called Mars and they were all little green men and you started to put little pink men in there just to mix it up a bit, it would, that's what you're doing. It's like going, oh, wait a minute, well, perhaps there was more different coloured people. And it's not a racist thing, because you're not saying anything against the race. You're just saying that historically, if you were depicting a 1800s or 1830s, whenever Dickens was writing. But if it's factual, it would just be less how they do it these days. Anyway, Mike Stephen, equality for everyone is surely the way. It's got nothing to do with equality, is it? That's not what I'm arguing. It's nothing to do with equality. Of course, equality on merit for anybody, of course. But you can't change history. You can't just go, oh, well, Cheddar Man was black. You just can't do that. You just can't do it. Well, you can do it, of course, and you'd be, everyone's buying into it. That's the thing. Anyway, whatever. Let's leave that conversation for another day before we get taken off. What is? Where the hell was I? Downs are haunted. It's easy to forget such thoughts when larks. Yes, we've done that. Man trotting. Oh, Piltdown Man. Well, we know that was a hoax. So in the land empty of any but the most grotesque and ancient memories, the lonely figure of a shepherd looming through the rain with his sheep has all the dramatic possibilities of a man met in a fog. It is almost with relief that you find that he is alive and clothed in an oilskin, a man from your own world and your own time, and not a figure conjured up by the Downs from beyond the mists of history. And where are all the shepherds now, I ask you? In a farmhouse near Poynings, where I took shelter from a violent shower, I met a man who talked to me about sheep and the diseases of sheep. Coronavirus was rather nasty, he said. COVID-19 has been killing our sheep for... I'm sorry, I made that up. Centuries of close feeding on the Downs have bred a minute worm or snail in the grass, which gives the sheep a liver disease called fluke. For this reason, large portions of the Downs are being rested. I saw in a shed a beautifully formed shepherd's crook made of steel and set on a wooden haft. That is a Pycombe hook, said the man. They're still made by the blacksmith over at Pycombe, but not in quantities as they used to be in the old days, for there are few shepherds on the Downs now. The rain cleared up, and I went on, thinking that shepherd herding in Sussex is perhaps the most ancient occupation in England, still carried out on the same spot. It is older than agriculture, for Stone Age man wandered with his sheep long before he settled down and was content to wait for the results of farming. I thought, too, what a wonderful thing a shepherd's crook is, the humble, common implement of most pastoral people, but also, after the cross, perhaps the most significant emblem of Christianity. I do not know when Christian bishops first took a crook as the symbol of their care of the souls, but it must have been early in the Christian centuries. I've never seen an Arab shepherd with a crook, although nearly every Christmas card or child's book of the Bible stories shows the shepherds at Bethlehem leaning on crooks. That's an interesting point, isn't it? The Palestine shepherd, who has probably not changed his habits since the New Testament, carries a club like shiligar and a long, straight staff. I think Roman shepherds used crooks, and certainly Pan was pictured with one. Therefore, it's probable that the European shepherd has given the church its symbol, and not the Eastern shepherd, which may explain why the symbol is used only by Western bishops. In the Eastern Church, it is unknown. That's an interesting point. I don't know if anyone knows that. Lewis says, true, better stop now before the YouTube police and the real police decide to check your thinking. Oh, yes, I heard about that bloke who had his thinking checked. My goodness. Oh, boy, I love a debate with some of you lovely lot. Exactly. No one can ban me from life, says Ed Loud, unless perhaps there is some creator. I didn't mean a debate on YouTube. The truth police would ban me. Not quite sure. Pan of the Pipes fame. Shillelagh. I don't know what a shillelagh is. Shillelagh. Shillelagh, is it? Shillelagh. Stress on the middle. Shillelagh. Or Shillelagh. Or Shilly-shally. There are channels on YouTube which debate this sort of thing, but I don't want to plug them in respect to Richard. Thank you very much. What a nice, what a nice thing to say in respect of Richard. It's very kind. I'm fascinated by all these things. I'm horrified by these things at the same time, instantly. But I'm very much a traditionalist. And the older I get, the more traditionalist I grow, and more I see it slipping away. And our history is our history, and we can't modify it. We shouldn't modify it. It's an Irish club. Oh, right. Thank you, Willoughby. I went to Pycombe to see the crook makers and found a tiny village tucked away on a hill above the broad sweep of the London-Brighton Road, where it comes down over the downs from Clayton. I know this part of the world so well. Although so near to the main road, Pycombe is a little bit of old Sussex. Few farm buildings, some cottages, an old partly Norman church, and a few yards from the church, the blacksmith's forge. I bet that's gone. Two brothers named Mitchell run the forge. Wait a minute, is this EastEnders? Run the forge and make the crooks and shoe about 40 horses a year. They're both, I should think, over 60. I imagine they're dead now then. And their father, who is 95, is still alive and gave up work only the other day. The old man remembers travelling down to Sussex from London on the Brighton coach long before anyone thought of motors. And I guess he means motor cars. In the dark forge, with the fire glowing and the beams hung with horseshoes, the brothers told me about the making of the shepherd's crooks. The head of the crook is of iron or steel, and nothing makes a better crook than the old gun barrel. Blimey. The haft of the crook must be formed of unpeeled hazel, for the shepherds will not have ash. Oh, the polish of the hazel. They polish the hazel until it looks like mahogany. Why not have mahogany then? As the purpose of the crook is to catch a sheep by its leg, and as the various breeds of sheep in England vary in size, there are many patterns. I didn't know that was the whole point of the crook. I know they had these crooks, and I thought, I wonder what they actually use them for. But it's to catch them by their leg, is it? See, that shows you. I'm showing my ignorance again. A Sussex crook would be of no use to a Kent shepherd, and a man herding Dorset horns would require still a different pattern. The South Down sheep is a small creature with a small leg, so the typical Pycombe crook is an elegant curve of metal with an opening of about an inch in width, just the right size to admit the animal's small leg bone. And here is a crook for you to see on a gatepost, which I imagine is still there because this is quite a recent book, taken by a modern photographer. I say modern, probably in the 80s, I think, when this was done. So there we go. A man came here t'other day to ask us to make a crook for a crossbreed sheep, said one of the Mitchells, and we had to make a much bigger crook than usual. The Kent people use a tremendously big crook. The sheep get into the dykes, and when they can't see their legs, they get them out by the neck, or where they can. In Scotland, I've heard tell, they make wooden crooks, but I ain't never seen one. Pycombe crooks last more than a lifetime, but there are fewer shepherds than ever on the downs. There is not much genuine demand for them today. Instead, the Mitchell brothers are generally busy making crooks for bishops and hikers. Young fellas and girls come along here and buy crooks, I was told. So do bishops. When a big conference was up in London recently, the forge was full of bishops wanting their crooks. We made crooks for the Archbishop of Cape Town and the Bishop of Uganda and also for the Bishop of Tristan da Cunha, who told us that he was the loneliest bishop in the world. Do they still have crooks? Do they still have that? Linda Kane will know. Do they still have crooks? Which would be interesting. Yes, that was photographed when we walked on the South Downs. Yes, amazing to see the different. It was on the Tapsell Gate. Yes, that's right. I guess the hook part is to grab the sheep by the neck, as Mr. Cook said of the crook. Indeed. Sorry, there's something in my fake eye. It is so itchy. It's so itchy, boys. It's so itchy. So we got talking about foreign parts, and I was told that the younger Mitchell had served in the South African War and in Egypt during the Great War, and he had been to Fayum, wherever that is, and to a lonely place on the west coast of Egypt, Mersa Matruth. He could hardly believe that I'd been there too, and I could hardly believe that he'd been there. So we stood in the forge swapping stories, while the other brother looked at us in admiration, as if Stanley had at last encountered Livingstone. Dr. Livingstone, I presume. Stanley was an American, wasn't he? Dr. Livingstone, I presume. It's very nice to meet you there, Doctor. I've been traipsing all around Africa for you. I had no idea where you are, you know. I don't know what part of America. I've got a book about Stanley, and I've seen his you know, where they die and they stick a lump of stone in the tombstone. That's up in near Woking. Forget the little village where he's buried. But he was an American newspaper man, wasn't he? And I read a book about Livingstone. Livingstone was a strange character. Dr. Livingstone. Oh, bless me! The heat in Fayum, said the Mitchell. Miles of sand, miles of it, and the sun beating on it day after day. Fellas round here would hardly believe what life's like out there. But what a relief it was to get back home, and to see that after nothing but sand and sand. And he waved his hand to that which was the dome of green grass, a great curve of the South Downs, the Sussex South Downs. So I left the brothers Mitchell near the London-Brighton road, but spiritually as far away from it as any two men could be. When a man has knocked about the world, it goes without saying that he must have talked to a number of barmaids on a variety of subjects. Oh, yeah. But looking back over many years, I cannot recollect one such conversation which has left any impression on my mind. I may have had the bad fortune to encounter dull barmaids, or I may not have been the kind of man to whom barmaids confide their more memorable thoughts. It was in the little village of Fittleworth in Sussex, or, to be more precise, in the snuff-brown bar of the Swan, that fate suddenly relented and decided it was time that I should have an interesting conversation with the girl behind the bar. It began ordinarily enough with a talk about the beauties of the local countryside, and then diverged at some point to the difficulty of photographing wild animals in their natural haunts. The girl told me that she'd been getting up at 6 o'clock for the past few mornings in order to photograph a family of foxes living on Fittleworth Common. It was a difficult job, she said, and necessary to creep up step by step, praying that a twig would not snap beneath her feet. And then she had to wait as still as a stone until the little foxes came out and played in a patch of early morning sunlight. They were just like puppies as they chased each other about and rolled their little red bodies over in the bracken. The light had been deceptive that morning, but she thought she had taken a good picture. Just when she had done so, the vixen became aware of her rather, and with a most peculiar bark called her young ones to cover. I thought that no one except perhaps Thomas Hardy could have imagined a barmaid in the bracken watching for little foxes. Indeed, sitting there under the black beams, I began to feel that I had somewhat got into a Wessex novel. Oh, I should love to photograph a badger, she said, with a longing which barmaids are commonly supposed to lavish upon more metropolitan delights. She came not from Sussex, but from the grand county of Suffolk. I don't know how they speak in Suffolk either. And she told me that she felt almost like a foreigner when she had first arrived. The Sussex dialect is so strong, and some of the words are difficult to catch at first. They call a lane a twitten, and they call a dyke a dick. Do they? While she was talking, the figure of a huge man with an apron of sacking around his waist loomed in the shadows of the bar in the act of drinking a tankard of beer. At her words, he removed the tankard for a second and said in a deep voice, as though proposing a toast, "Good old Sussex," and then immediately lifted the tankard again and put it down empty. We talked about otters and badgers and about grasshopper warbler, which had been heard in those parts, and I went to bed with the pleasant knowledge that I shall always connect Fittleworth with the only interesting conversation that I have ever had with a barmaid. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? How about that? Would a blacksmith or a carpenter make a crook? Well, it was the blacksmith made the crook. I suppose the carpenter isn't really doing much on a crook other than you've got this piece of hazel, which is polished to look like mahogany, and it's shoved on there, isn't it? I imagine there's some Sussex blacksmiths that will be making Pycombe crooks on commission. Oh, yeah. Love the pub, the Swan. Yes, been to the Swan. The Swan is the pub at the end of the Stopham Bridge. Think the Swan is at the one at Stopham Bridge. One of my ancestors was the landlord. No, that's the Hart. The White Hart is the one at the Stopham Bridge. The Swan is the one in Fittleworth, where you've got the beam going across the road. Do you know? And then if you keep going, you've got the two little bridges and the watermill on the side. Julia and I filmed there, and we I can't remember. We walked up the thing, and Cynthia, Julian, and I had a cup of coffee in the Swan, and I think Julia and I had a drink in the Swan. I can't remember if we did. Yes, the White Hart is the one. Julia and I had a meal in the White Hart not so long ago. I think on her birthday. No, it wasn't her birthday. There was some celebration that we went and did that, didn't we? Maybe it was on your birthday. Last year. Golly, that seems so long ago. It's a nice pub, and they do good steaks. Kay Dean says, "Hi from Canada, just logged in. I'm certainly go back and listen to this. I'm thoroughly enjoying your narrating. Just wonderful to see you do these." Thank you so much. What a nice thing to say. Mark Donny McLeod says, "Suffolk is like Norfolk, Richard. Not as hard, though, on the consonants." Yeah, I'm not. I need to study the different places. Quite right, Richard. There was a car club. There was a car club that used to meet there. What, at the White Hart or the Swan? There is a mill and a mill race that comes tumbling down out of the bushes to form a dark pool near a grey bridge. The wooden panels of the smoke room of the Swan. Oh yeah, here we are. This is the Swan. This is the Fittleworth Mill and the Swan interior. It's a nice old pub. Bit modern on the inside, though. That's what I would say. We'll just do a little bit more. Just trying to see where we can stop. How are we doing on 10 minutes? I remember a rant about steaks from one of your previous book readings. Yes, because people eat their steaks with blood in it. The village is among the most recognised beautiful spots of Sussex. Its irregularly grouped cluster of sleepy little cottages, some white and thatched, some half-timbered, and looks as like most old English villages do. And this is the true secret of their beauty, as if it had grown up as naturally out of the soil as the oak trees and hedges. There is an old mill and mill race that comes tumbling out of the bushes to form a dark pool near a grey bridge. Julia and I crossed that bridge. There is a good early English church dedicated to St. Mary. Julia and I have wandered round there with a beautiful yew tree in the garden. There is an old yew tree in the churchyard. There you go, I just said that. There are other less tangible beauties, such as the fall of light and shade, which has enchanted many artists who have left what I trust is not their best work on the wooden panels of the smoke room at the Swan. And it's true, there are. When did he do this? 100 years ago. Yes, there are these pictures that local artists have done. Whether they're the same ones, I don't know. That's interesting, that is, that he's writing that 80 years ago. As I wandered round the village, I thought how silent and reserved such places are. Visitors come to look at them, look round and say how pretty this is or how nice that is. But of the great procession of humble human life that has been passing through them for long centuries, they know nothing. Neither is there much to be known. We know that the Knight of the Hall went on the Crusades, or that he died in the War of Roses, or that the more recent times the Squire had sat in Parliament, but of the hundreds and thousands of common people who've been born and who've died in the place, there is no record. Now and then a painstaking vicar or someone interested in the history of the village will go to the trouble of searching the record office, the parish registers and the manorial rolls in the hope of gleaning one ear of local corn, and the result is always worthwhile. We cannot have too many village histories, and Fittleworth is lucky to have found its local historian in the Honourable Lady Maxie, whose little book, The Story of Fittleworth, came into my hands by chance. I commend it to all who would like to write the annuals of their parish. Having read the book, I know why a place near Fittleworth is called Plum Pudding Corner. It seems that from 1279, when Fittleworth was already an old village, a weekly fair used to be held at the neighbouring village of Edgedean, then an important place, and it was at Plum Pudding Corner that the crowds attending the fair purchased plum puddings, cooked for them in rows of ovens which have left their mark on the meadows. It is well known that small communities elsewhere love a bit of scandal and gossip. Oh, we love a bit of scandal. Oh, yes, we do. No, stop mucking about. Lady Maxie, or Max, or whatever her name is, tells the story about the village gossip in the days of Henry VIII, which not only suggests that gossip is eternal and unalterable, but also casts a revealing light on the government of England in those days. Henry's reign and the period of the Republic, when England was ruled by Cromwell's psalm-singing generals, were probably the two most sternly disciplined periods of our history. There were spies everywhere, even in little Fittleworth, as our story shows. One day, in the year of 1538, 2 tax collectors arrived in Fittleworth to take away the pig of a man named Hamlin, for the non-payment of 4pence, taxes due to the king. Hamlin was out, but his next-door neighbour, a kindly woman by the name of Margaret Caynard, asked the men why they were driving away the hog, and upon learning the reason, offered to pay the fine. They took her money and put the hog back in its sty. When Hamlin came home, instead of being grateful, he was furious with the woman. He said he was able to pay the money as she was, and then pointed out that the money was the king's and had to be paid then and there. And he burst... I need to read that again because I'm not quite clear what his beef is here. When Hamlin came home, instead of being grateful, he was furious with the woman. He said that he was able to pay the money, just as able, I suppose, as pay the money as she was. And when she pointed out that the money was the king's and had to be paid there and then, he burst out with these fatal words: "The king will have all our money and all we have. I pray God of vengeance on the king and his council. I would that they were all hanged." It may seem incredible to us today, but not perhaps unbelievable to the citizens in this spy-ridden countries, that the words of an enraged rustic in Fittleworth soon reached the ears of the King's Council in London. The progress, they had fireway, that's what they had. They had some fireway in their walls doing the 5G listening in thing. They probably had one of those Alexa things. All Alexas have woken up now. The process was this. First, the village gossip got hold of the story and wagged their chins off. And as the story grew with every telling, Margaret Caynard was so certain that she would be implicated, her name had been coupled with that of Hamlin, that she sought out the local spy and turned King's evidence. This man went straight to the squire, who went straight to the local knight, who held an inquiry and sent the report, the evidence of 4 village women, up to the council in London. The order came back to fling Hamlin into prison. What his fate was we do not know, but for lesser crimes men have died. Is there not a moral in this, which we all love to enlarge on the affairs of their neighbours? Is there not a moral in this, which all who love to enlarge on the affairs of their neighbours might take to heart? Another thing which impressed me while reading the slender records of the village like Fittleworth is the way towns have drained such villages of their industries during the last 2 centuries. When roads were bad and communications difficult, and before factories catered for the many, each village, no matter how small, was the nest of trades. The little places were almost self-supporting. They had their own shoemaker, weavers, tailors, carpenters, builders, and so on, while the cottagers made their own bread, grew much of their own food, and brewed their own ale. All these talents have vanished, and those who practised them have long since departed. No village was complete without its witch, whose rhymes and remedies were respected by the people who would readily pour doctor's medicine down the sink. Fittleworth's witch lived under a 3-pine tree on top of Wickham Hill, and it is said that on cloudy nights her charms worked wonderfully. But if the moon broke through and revealed the spire of Fittleworth Church, they just fizzled out, and the power departed. The last wise woman in Fittleworth was a Mrs. Cooper, who was curing adder's bite and giddiness in cattle well into the last century. So I walked about Fittleworth, looking at the sleepy old cottages. I thought, you've seen quite a lot of life since Saxon times, but your story is not, as the sentimentalists would like to think, that of old ladies cutting flowers in the front garden, but of men and women with their full share of generosity and kindness, of malice and villainy, of bravery and cowardice, of wisdom and stupidity. For small as you are an adequate fragment of the great world. You are an adequate fragment of the great world. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we must hasten from Fittleworth for a short duration, leaving Mr. Morton with those wondrous thoughts echoing around in his multifaceted brain. Tea is lovely, but on a warm, sultry afternoon like today, I have a cold orange juice with the bits left in it. I have to say, a nice cup of tea on a hot day is what I like. That's it, slice it. So people are talking about that. Most villages produce their own magazine. I think it was called Witch Magazine. All right. Old Wise Women. Old Wise Woman. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That was rather pleasant. Not too many rants came up in there. We did nearly get blocked off of YouTube, but we managed to rein it back in between us all. Well done. And now it's 5 o'clock, time for PM. So I am going to disappear, and you are going to go back into the Vobosphere. I may see some of you this evening at 8 o'clock on the Vob Show channel. Just check out for the Vob Show thing. Audrey Forbes Hamilton says, stayed in Fittleworth 50 years ago in a youth hostel, visited a doll factory and Shipham's paste factory. We all came home with food poisoning. Shipham's paste factory was in Chichester, and it's not that far from Fittleworth. I imagine that's where you must have gone. The doll factory, there was a doll museum in Chichester too. I think that's gone. Lovely reading, Richard. Very addictive listening to you. Thank you very much, Ed. So there we go. I'm getting cold in the back room, so I'm going to go and warm myself up and light the Essie. Yeah. Take care, one and all, and I will catch up with you later on. Until then, toodle pip. Ta-ta, and bye-bye. Oh, and if you liked it, give us a thumbs up. Very kind.